A special welcome is extended to those who may be joining us for the first or second time at the Winchester Unitarian Society. We invite you to complete the visitor card found in the pew rack in front of you and place it in the offering plate. This will help us stay connected beyond today's service. Right after worship, we are all invited to attend the chili cook-off downstairs in Metcalf Hall. You'll see the crowd heading downstairs. Along with many different kinds of chili, there are competing mac and cheese recipes. Try them all and cast your votes. This year, we have taken extraordinary measures to prevent election fraud. Donations benefit the youth group's upcoming service trip to War, West Virginia. At the chili cook-off, be sure to visit the interim search committee who will be sitting at a dedicated table. They will encourage you to take a survey to help shape the process in finding the interim minister. Let us take a moment to introduce them. They are Sarah Milt, Patty Cameron, Woody Wood, Tricia McDowell, and Kathy Richardson, who by the way is the chair. I'll now invite John Kramer and Liz Lind to share a special announcement.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to invite you all to our fabulous concert, the last concert of the concert series this Friday night here in the sanctuary at 8 p.m. We have a wonderful bluegrass musician, Tony Watt, with the Southeast Expressway, his band that will be joining us for really, really high-powered, wonderful, up-tempo music. Come, you won't be sorry. Here at 8 o'clock. Remember, this is a fundraiser for the church, so the more friends that you can also invite, the better for us all. Thanks so much, and I'll see you at the concert.
Top of the morning to you, ye lads and lasses of Winchester Unitarian Society. I am here on this St. Patrick's Day on behalf of the pledge team, and I have 2 points to make. First, I'm only a quarter Irish, and that by way of my beloved father from Dallas, Texas. So I must start with heartfelt apologies to Irish people everywhere for my dreadful accent. Secondly, I want to remind you that we cannot leave the health of our beloved society to the luck of the Irish. No, it is up to all of us to pledge generously to fill up that pot of gold in support of next year's programs, our wonderful staff, and the soundness of our venerable old building. As of Friday, we have 36 pledges totaling nearly $180,000. This is a very encouraging start, but we are running out of time and we still have quite a ways to go to reach our goal of $425,000. So, if you haven't sent in your pledge yet, I ask you to pledge as soon as possible. And if you have your card with you today, fill it out and put it in the collection plate. Or go home and fill out your card if it's at home and put it in the mail. We thank you all for all you do in support of our wonderful community. And now I want to invite the children who want to come up and put some of our leaves on the tree. Each leaf represents a pledge card completed by one or more of our members or friends of the Winchester Unitarian Society. Make your pledge now to further foliate our tree. Thank you.
Let us now open our hearts and minds to the spirit of worship. Our invocation today is a responsive invocation. I will read the words in standard type, and the community will respond with the indented words that are in italicized type. You may find these words in your order of service, and they will appear on the live stream screen. let us begin. Welcome all who seek renewal in a weary world. Welcome to those who worry for the future. Welcome each one who is grateful for today. Know that in this place, you are not alone. In community, we share our strength with one another and keep the flame of love burning. Know that in this place, responsibility is shared. Here, the young lift their bright faces and beckon us onward. Take my hand, and we go on together.
I now invite Lua Spencer to come forward to light our chalice. Love is the aspiration, the spirit that moves and inspires this faith we share. Love can nurture our spirits and transform the world. May the flame of this chalice honor and embody the power and the blessing of the love we need, the love we give, the love we are challenged always to remember and to share. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our opening hymn, number 1017 in the Teal hymnal.
I invite those who are young and young at heart to come forward for a story. Good morning, everybody. So I have a beautiful book to share with you this morning, and you can see it on the screen or you can see it in the book when I hold it up. It's called The Rare Tiny Flower. But before I start reading the book, I want to give one very important announcement to parents that a reminder went out, but I want to remind you again that today we're instituting our new pickup procedure for RE, so we will be bringing children down at 11:35, and you can pick your children up at the kids' table. I know that we're in Metcalf for the chili cook-off, but please do come to the kids' table before you head down, okay? All right, on to The Rare Tiny Flower. Once in a forest, a bird dropped a seed. It wasn't a sapling, it wasn't a weed, but a rare tiny flower that found light and grew. To some it looked red, to some it looked blue. Others saw yellow, but many saw green. A more puzzling flower had never been seen. A number saw umber. A small group saw teal. We see it correctly. We see what is real. Each group insisted its vision was right. Agree it's magenta or we'll start a fight. It's mustard, it's purple, it's turquoise, it's pink, it's chartreuse, it's puce, it's whatever we think. It's midnight, it's coral, it's violet, red, it's silver, it's orange. You're weak in the head. It's sweet periwinkle, it's mango, maroonish, it's white as a snowflake. You're crazy, you're loonish. Powerful leaders arrived, striking poses. We will not agree, and noses met noses. Botanists came to settle the score, but couldn't decide. So the leaders cried, war. One pulled up the flower to shove in a vase as everyone hollered and argued their case. The gifts of the flower risked being lost as people drew lines that couldn't be crossed. A little girl watched the loud confrontation, then circled the flower in slow exploration. Please, look again, came her calm, patient voice. Why? Cried the screamers. She smiled. There's a choice. How could this be? What could this mean? What had she noticed that they hadn't seen? She lifted the vase and slowly rotated as all of the people grew still, then elated. For as the girl turned, the colors changed places, flashing a rainbow across startled faces. The people took time for silent reflection, considering matters with deep introspection. Maybe there are other colors to see. What's lovely to you could be lovely to me. What we now understand to be utterly true is how much depends on expanding our view. It could be helpful to breathe and be still, calmly deciding what won't work and will. Enjoying each color and welcoming all, creating a party instead of a brawl. Oh no, the girl pointed. Look at the flower. It's wilted and faded and losing its power. Everyone watched as the rainbow unspun. What had their fighting and selfishness done? The rare tiny flower looked shriveled and weak. Its petals were falling. No one could speak. The people were sad and started to cry. Had their ingratitude caused it to die? The girl very gently returned it to earth. Could it be nourished and loved to rebirth? Her tears showered down and watered it. Then, the rare tiny flower grew healthy again. Its colors exploded, filling the sky, and everyone raised an exuberant cry. All of the people from all of the lands smiled and joyfully reached out their hands. They danced and began composing a song about being friendly and getting along. When hearts come together, kindness can grow, rainbows can happen, more than we know. So much to fix, too many false starts, no time to waste in uniting our hearts. All of creation is precious and rare, and everyone has color to share. Life is for loving and listening well, and learning all colors have stories to tell. The people were shining, for they were new too. Each one considered the other one's view. A girl and a flower, both small but courageous, made loving all colors quite wildly contagious. The rare tiny flower shared wisdom that day. A rainbow can happen when love leads the way. Now invite the grown-ups to sing the children and teachers to church school. The words are in your order of service.
Shining for you.
We now come to the centering time in the service, settling in body and spirit. First through words and then ritual, kindling of the light, a time to light a candle of personal joy or sorrow at the candle table in the sanctuary or at home. At that time, if you would like a candle brought to you in the pews, please raise your hand. After we kindle the light, we'll be together in a time of shared silence, out of which we will sing hymn number 10 in the gray hymnal, Immortal Love. Let us begin with Things to Remember as This World Dies by Chris Taylor. You did not come here to pay bills and die, nor did you come to build the fortunes of those destroying the earth. Imagine instead that you came to gather precious things fallen from the pockets of the ancient ones as they fled the desert's march, each a reminder of something they pledged never to forget. Things like how to call birds by name with your whistle, which news to tell the bees, and which to share only with the moon, how to tell a parliament from a conspiracy, a colony from a convocation. Things like nature has no race or nation, class or creed, except when humans seek to deceive. Division designed to sever you from kith and kin and Buddha mind. Things like the antidote to oppression is not freedom, but belonging. The opposite of domination is communion. The medicine you need is always outside your door, and there is likely a wise woman 2 streets away to show you how to use it. These things were left to help us remember how each world before has ended, and how each death becomes a door to new life, and how this world wants to take you in her arms and make of you a lover, and have you listen to the land, talk to the stream, find meaning in the silence of trees, and wisdom on the singing breeze. Listen a while to discover the right season for all the 10,000 things, the 99 names we use for our own divinity, how to share power so it cannot be captured by the vain and greedy, how to step into the flow of life and make of the earth a common treasury for all beings, how to map the stars, learn the lesson of each constellation, and still know there is more in heaven and earth than any of us were ever meant to know. So fill your pockets as this world dies, knowing some of it will guide you to the next and some will fall to the ground, in time to be found by those who will bring the world back to life. Let us now kindle the light. If you read my reflection in the most recent issue of our newsletter, The Mystic Messenger, you learned about my very first pilgrimage to the Unitarian homeland of Transylvania. This morning, I tell you a little more of that story, and through our collective imagination, invite you to go on this visit with me. Besides a few road trips to Canada, this was my first international trip. We landed in Budapest, and after a few days of sightseeing, were driven across the border into Romania. From our layover in Berlin to touring Budapest, and then honoring All Souls Day through a solemn ceremony, and then the Sunday worship service, with so many languages swirling around me. In many ways, I was perpetually reminded how far I was from home. I made this visit when I served my previous congregation, Cedar Lane, partnered with the Unitarian Church of Dicha St. Martin. The Dicha minister and his family lived on church grounds. Over dinner, we enjoyed vegetables grown in the church garden and drank plum palinka, a strong ethnic brandy the minister made in the basement. The parsonage functioned like a small, genteel farm, supporting the family and likely some families in the congregation with its produce. In case you're wondering, I do not know how to make brandy in my basement. But perhaps the greatest difference between this place and where I served in Washington, D.C. suburbs was the church itself, the structure, the worship, and its customs. Some ministers in the United States, like me, wear clergy robes, giving us, in the words of one colleague, an old-fashioned faculty meeting at Hogwarts look. But Unitarian ministers in Transylvania go further, wearing full-length lined black capes, not too different from what we imagine when we think of Dracula. Unitarianism in Transylvania is still very much grounded in the story and personhood of Jesus, with Christianity as both its heritage and its identity. The church building is hundreds of years older than some of the colonial age churches here in New England. There's a main front door, but people usually enter through the side doors, with men entering and sitting on one side and women entering and sitting on the other. That Sunday, hanging in the center of the sanctuary from the ceiling was a large structure, seemingly made of straw. It was from their more recent Thanksgiving ceremony held in September. The entire service was led in Hungarian, kindly translated into English by the minister's son, Andra Jr. I offered a short reflection, made longer by translation into Hungarian. Since I was speaking in the service, I sat on the minister's bench, a fixture on the male side of the sanctuary. At that time in Transylvania, about 18 years ago, most of the ministers were men, so this made sense in this very binary space. My awareness of being a woman in this very male role became the greatest at the end of the service. Like in America, there was a receiving line, but being on the male side of the sanctuary, I greeted people at the male door. So the only people to receive were the men in the congregation. At the time, I spoke absolutely no Hungarian, and with the exception of one very fluent congregant, there were few words of English among them, so there was little to say. These Hungarian gentlemen, however, were able to communicate in a fashion. Later, when I took some Hungarian classes, I learned a phrase, kezet csokolom, meaning, I kiss your hand. A very traditional greeting from the young to the elderly, or from men to women, is to pause and kiss their hand. To say kezet csokolom is to symbolically offer this polite greeting without actually doing any kissing. But here was this young woman, all the way from America, standing before them. So a long line of men silently paused before me, took my hand, and kissed it. I admit it was strange, but nice, and not a custom I think we should start here. This visit to Transylvania was not the first time I became aware of how cultures can be so different from one another, but the cultural distance between the two partner churches was stark. As we've made this trip together, I invite us to return now to our sanctuary to enjoy an anthem by the choir. It's a Renaissance piece celebrating the birth of Christ. Like our Hungarian friends, some may experience this music as part of your Christian devotional life. Some may experience it primarily as art, evocative of another time and place. Some may experience it as beautiful sounds that inspire your mind and spirit. Like the rare, tiny flower, it may mean different things to different people. Thank you, choir, for offering us this gift. So why our recent imaginary trip to Transylvania? In this month centered on transformation, in this time of looking back over the almost 9 years of ministry here at the Winchester Unitarian Society, I became inspired to reflect and share my observations of how I've seen our community culture transform. Practicing Unitarian Universalism here is different than practicing Unitarian Christianity in Transylvania. And if we could all board a time machine, I imagine practicing American Unitarianism here in 1865, when the congregation was gathered, would be very different than how we gather and worship this morning. Cultures change over time, even relatively short periods of time, like my ministry with you. Observing these changes and developing consciousness around the cultures we have, the cultures we want, and how to get there empowers a group to change or transform according to its needs. I say group because every group has a culture, whether it's an institution like a school, an affiliation like a family, or any other association. We recognize differing cultures between families when we drop in on somebody's holiday meal or invite someone else from the outside into ours. But first, what is culture? Someone once observed that culture is often reduced to obvious signs of difference: flags, food, and fun. But that is just what we experience on the surface. Perhaps you've seen this image of the cultural iceberg. I'll give you a moment to consider it. So much of culture is unspoken, but over time, clearly understood by those within it. And cultures are passed from generation to generation. Here is where we consider how cultures are made, and this is where the bananas come in. A colleague once used this metaphor to illustrate the creation and transmission of culture. Imagine you have 10 monkeys and you put them in a large cage. Hanging from the ceiling is a luscious bunch of bananas. The monkeys reach for the bananas, but to their surprise, they feel a mild shock. They try again and they keep getting shocked. Eventually, they learn to leave the bananas alone. Take 5 of the monkeys out of the cage and bring in 5 new ones. Being monkeys, the 5 newcomers will reach for the bananas, only to be challenged by the veteran monkeys. "What is wrong with you?" they might say in monkey. "Those bananas are dangerous." In time, despite the bananas' lingering appeal, the new monkeys learn to avoid them. The original 5 monkeys are then taken out, and 5 more are brought in. The second batch of monkeys teach the incoming monkeys the banana code. They may look delicious, but they are not to be touched. At this point, the actual state of the bananas is unclear. Perhaps electricity has been cut and the bananas are just fine. But to belong in this group, one has to learn not to reach for the bananas. And this is the way it is with humans. Through direct and indirect messages, we are taught what is positive and what is negative, what is allowed and what is forbidden. Oh, let's go to a blank slide. Thank you. One way WUS has transformed over time is our collective openness to truth-telling. Speaking of candor, when I first became acquainted with the Winchester Unitarian Society as a candidate minister, I learned that this community was known for keeping secrets. With apologies to those who've heard this story before, the origins of this cultural norm are traced back to the ministry of Robert Storer. Reverend Storer served this congregation for about 20 years throughout the tumult of the 1950s and 60s. The way people still speak of him today, if he could rise from the dead, he could easily become minister again. He was deeply respected and very beloved. But there was a problem. Reverend Storer was unmarried, yet he shared the parsonage with a male roommate. Today, we would understand them as partners, but in the broader cultural norms of his time, no church of any denomination would welcome an openly gay minister. So the congregation joined Reverend Storer in the closet, keeping his identity a secret. If someone joined the board, the standing committee, a current member would pull them aside and say, "Now that you're on the board, you can know that we have a gay minister, but don't tell anyone." One longtime member observed that this is how the congregation protected him, and considering the time, she was right. When I think of this time, my heart goes out to Bob Storer and his partner, and my heart goes out to the congregation he served. Secrets are burdens that over time cause more harm than provide the safety they promise. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned meeting with David Petit, a UU minister who grew up in this congregation. Over lunch, he shared a story with me that he heard from his father. When the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. put out the call to clergy to come to Selma, Bob Storer prepared to heed the call. But before he could go, a member of the congregation met with him and said, "If you go to Selma, you can take your roommate with you and not come back." Blackmailed by homophobia, Storer stayed home. David Petit concluded the story by saying that it wasn't his father's sense that the member was wary of supporting civil rights. It was more, what would the neighbors think? Social shame became an obstacle to the community clearly naming its commitment to racial justice. When I arrived in 2015, the Black Lives Matter movement, the next wave of Black civil rights activism, was well underway. There was informal discussion about if we were to hang a Black Lives Matter banner on society grounds, how would we go about it? Early discussions suggested that we would need a very expensive and elaborate frame for a banner. But then a couple things happened. The music committee asked that we install a simple banner to advertise concerts like the one this Friday, tell your friends. This became a way to communicate other congregational events and, in time, some of our value statements. I also remember the afternoon when, organizing a closet in the building, I found our rainbow flag. It occurred to me that considering we are an established, welcoming congregation, our pride flag does not belong in the closet. The then standing committee gave permission for us to regularly hang the flag at the building. After a long and thoughtful process in 2018, the congregation voted to hang a Black Lives Matter banner at the building as part of our commitment to racial justice. It was then that our regular flag display, including the Progress Pride flag, the BLM flag, and the American flag, became a regular fixture here at WUS. Since then, the flags have been stolen and vandalized more times than I can remember. We have learned what some of the neighbors think about our vision of inclusion. And yet, in 2020, we partnered with Network for Social Justice in distributing rainbow decals to homeowners and businesses, as each time one of our rainbow flags was removed, one of the few symbols of queer welcome in town was silenced. And then we got creative with our public relations. Even before I arrived, WUS has imagined a more dedicated and focused outreach effort about our ministries, and time and again, it could not get off the ground. I think part of the challenge has been the reality that to tell the truth about who we are and what we value violates an old and powerful cultural norm committed to blending in and not making waves. We now have a small but emerging marketing team figuring out how to clearly communicate who we are to the outside world. Through their efforts and our commitment to displaying our value statements through the flags, we are grabbing bananas. I sense that the pain of hiding who we are would now be greater than what any harassment could create. Another way we are transforming is through living into the motto, connection, not perfection. This phrase, shared with director of music John Kramer by one of his music colleagues during the challenging days of pandemic Zoom worship, has organically woven into our common conversation. I know of at least one WUS household where it has become a touchstone in family life. Like many congregations of any denomination, sometimes it seems like the cultural hallmarks of capitalism have crept into the community. Some understand congregational life as an experience that, if it meets their needs and they enjoy it, they'll contribute towards it, like a movie or a play. Tolerance for things they dislike is low, even if it meets the needs of other people. And because they are paying for it, expectations are high, while support or involvement may be low. I've been told that a past minister believed that church should be like a cruise where everything is taken care of for you. Let it suffice to say that this is not my vision of beloved community. I often return to an observation by Kierkegaard, who affirms that people have an idea that the preacher is an actor on a stage, and they are the critics, blaming or praising. What they don't know is that they are the actors on the stage. The preacher is merely the prompter standing in the wings, reminding them of their lost lines. To me, it feels like there's now greater capacity for us to be humans together in worship, to cry when we're moved, to sing out even if we can't carry a tune, to react when something is exciting or joyful. Once the frozen chosen, our understanding of what is happening when we gather is shifting from viewing a performance to authentically engaging with one another. We are grabbing the bananas of human connection, and I think we are finding it delicious. Tammy McCannon once said in a sermon, "Tradition never comes back and asks you, 'How is this working out for you?' Her observation reminds us that mindfulness about the ways of being together and how they do or do not serve us give us the freedom to make conscious choices. Sometimes when we know how we want to act differently, we just have to rip off the Band-Aid or reach for the banana, having faith that while change may be unpopular, it may give us what we need to thrive. It is true for congregations and for families and for workplaces, and perhaps also for monkeys."
purpose of our church is to inspire everyone to become more generous in spirit and action. Our annual pledges help us fund our programs, pay our staff and leaders, and maintain our beautiful building. Passing the plate during worship is a way for us to express gratitude for our blessings and celebrate the abundance in our lives. It's a cherished part of our weekly gathering. In recognition of Women's History Month this morning, we share our gifts with the International Convocation of UU Women, whose mission is advancing equity for women and girls worldwide through leadership development, empowerment, and awareness programs, advocacy, and resources. Led by Unitarian Universalist women from around the world, its members include Unitarian Universalists and other people of liberal religious faith. In today's second reflection, we made a visit to Transylvania. Consider attempting the fourth convocation of the ICUUW in Transylvania in real life from September 5th to the 8th, 2024. You may learn more at the link in your order of service. Here are the different ways you can donate. Those in the sanctuary may give cash, checks, or donate electronically. Text to the number in your order of service or visit our website under the Giving page. If you're visiting for the first time, either in person or online, you are our guest. In-person attendees can find a physical visitor card in the pew racks in front of you. Please complete it and put it in the collection plate. Information about how to give online and how to complete the virtual visitor card will soon be shared with live stream attendees through text on your screen. The offering will now be generously given and gratefully received. Those who wish to do so are invited to join in the unison affirmation. We gather not for ourselves alone, but to use our common power to build a beloved community within and beyond these walls. We create and reaffirm this covenant this day to make justice flourish, to practice compassion amidst difference, and to embody transformative love. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing hymn number 295 in the Gray Hymnal.
May we each find the balance point we need as we move through our ever-changing world. The balance between the old and the new, between the known and the unknown, between the familiar and perhaps bold and risky possibilities that there may be waiting. Go in peace. Amen.
together the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, the light of truth, warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. The service is ended, but our life of service continues. Let's continue the conversations downstairs in Metcalf Hall at the Chili Cook-Off.